Hi, this is Real People, Real Matters with Diana Tulchinsky. My first guest is Laurie Carver.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Laurie. I just ran into you a couple of weeks ago at Walsh Natural Health in Evanston.
Yes.
I understand that you are from South Dakota. Is that such a far away from here?
Yeah, it's about a 14-hour drive. I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, in Rapid City, South Dakota. I was born and raised there.
That is such a memorable story. Tell me about your early childhood with your mom and dad.
Oh, it was a wonderful place to grow up. I tell people to take vacations there all the time because it's great for families. But I was there until I graduated from college at the age of 21. But growing up in the Black Hills was just so much fun because every weekend you could just head up into the hills and hang out at the creek or at a lake or go boating or hiking. It was just a beautiful place to be, really.
And I understand both your mom and dad had very interesting education from South Dakota.
Well, they both just had, they just graduated from junior college in Sioux Falls. So they just went through 2 years of college and they ended up in Rapid City, and my dad managed a coffee shop. My mother helped him. Then my dad went on and opened up a little restaurant of his own. So I think from early on, my parents kind of exposed me to the idea of being an entrepreneur. And in fact, in the Black Hills and in Rapid City, it's quite a tourist area, and there are lots and lots of small businesses that are privately owned. In fact, one summer, I painted signs.
Wow.
For all of these businesses. Two friends of mine and I went all over the Black Hills painting big billboards.
Who inspired you to draw so much and have that artistic ability?
You know what? I don't know that I was inspired by anyone. I just did it. It was just something I did from the moment I could pick up a pencil and a crayon. I drew. And I colored.
Oh. And then for undergraduate, what was your first passion?
Well, my first major in college was occupational therapy, and that was because I thought I didn't know how you could make a living as an artist. I always loved art, but I was always really good in all subjects at school, and I didn't really know how you could make a living as an artist. So somehow I heard about this trade called occupational therapy, thinking, okay, I could be helping people get better and using arts and crafts to help them. So I majored in that at first, and then I realized that wasn't for me.
How did you like the anatomy and the cadavers? Was it?
Well, that was the part that I really, really loved. We got to take anatomy class and work on actual cadavers. And that was fascinating. I could really understand why Da Vinci spent so much time watching autopsies, because it really helps you understand the human body. And later, when I did go on to major in art, I loved drawing the human form. And when you understand the bone structure and the muscle structure that's underlying the skin, you understand why a body is shaped the way it is.
Did you ever want to pursue a career in medical illustration, or?
Well, it wasn't until many years later, when I was in healthcare advertising and medical advertising, that I hired medical illustrators, that I even knew that there was such a major possible. I ended up majoring in, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts, a BFA, in advertising design. And the reason I did that was that I knew that I could get out of college and get a job and make a living. I mean, I knew I would be married, but I knew that I wanted to be able to support myself also and contribute to the household income. And I thought that going into advertising would really do that for me. Plus, I really was committed to hiring artists, to putting artists to work, that if I was in that commercial space, I'd be able to hire illustrators and photographers and painters to do the images that I was going to put into the advertising I created.
How did you like the atmosphere in South Carolina University?
That's where I got my degree, University of South Carolina. I was only there for a year and a half. It was a fantastic school for me to go to. Living down there was not my piece of cake. It's too hot, it's too humid for me, too many bugs. But the education I got was great because I had one professor who knew the world of advertising, ad agencies, and then I had another professor who knew the world of design firms, they're very different worlds. And so I got exposed to both of those and made the decision to go into advertising.
Did your professors help you have a portfolio and helped you interviewing those two professors?
Well, they really helped me prepare a really outstanding portfolio that allowed me to land a job very quickly once I got to Chicago. In terms of the kind of coaching that one would need at that age for interviewing, that was non-existent. In fact, I showed up in Chicago, just took my portfolio, went down into the city, and just showed up at ad agencies. I didn't even have the coaching to have anybody say, you know what, you call people and you set an appointment. I didn't know that, I just showed up. And they thought I was really gutsy, but I was just naive.
How long did the phone calls start happening to start like an entry-level job?
Well, the first ad agency that I called I did call an ad agency, and it was one name at one ad agency that I was given by someone else. I can't even remember who the person was, but they weren't looking. And I said, can you even suggest another ad agency? So I went to that ad agency and asked to speak to the creative director. And he actually had time to see me even though I'd not made an appointment. He liked my portfolio. He liked me. He picked up the phone. He called another creative director at another ad agency. I hightailed it over there. He picked up the phone, called somebody else, and I think it was the third phone call, I was offered a job. I was offered a job at Postkeys Gardner in Chicago. It was the third largest ad agency at the time.
That's very interesting. That's in the Hancock building. Right?
It is. It was on the 36th floor. And I thought I'd just like died and gone to heaven here. And I'm this kid from South Dakota, and I'm working on the 36th floor of the Hancock building in the third largest ad agency in the city, one of the largest in the country. It was amazing.
I guess you had a view of Lake Michigan, right?
Well, I did eventually. My first job, my entry job, was in the mounting room of the ad agency, which was right in the center, in the core of the agency, because all the art directors brought all their ads that they had drawn and lettered. They brought it into the mounting room, and we mounted them for presentation to clients. And I did that for 3 months, and I had a chance to sit at my little drafting table and draw and put things on the wall and create some exposure for myself. I was coached by the guy who ran the mounting room, Clarence Meyer, bless his heart. He was my first mentor. And because of that exposure, I then was offered a job as a renderer. So that's when I got my little tiny office, 8 foot square, but with a gigantic window, floor to ceiling, looking out over Lake Michigan with 3 sets of markers. And that's when I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. You know, all I got to do was sit there and draw and color and letter all day long.
How are you different from, I guess, the creative directors that were with you in Postkeys and Gardner?
What do you mean?
Like, I guess your drawing skills or computer skills at the time, like, were you considered, like what helped you become a renderer?
Well, there were no computers at the time, okay? I graduated from college in 1976, so we didn't have computers. So everything was drawn. So the fact that I could draw set me apart. There are a lot of people who could design and conceptualize, but they couldn't necessarily draw. And everything that was in it, we were doing ads and storyboards for television commercials. And everything had to be drawn. The pictures were drawn. And the headlines were hand lettered and the subheads were hand lettered. So the fact that I could do that allowed me to land a job. The fact that I could do more than that allowed me to move even further into my career.
When did you go to Sieber and McIntyre, like afterward? Or?
Well, I think I was a renderer, I want to say for about a year. And one day the same thing happened. One of the men that I worked with, one of the other renderers, got a call from a creative director at an ad agency, said they were looking for an assistant art director. That's a beginning position as an art director. And he said, hey, I've got this kid that I think would be really great. So took my portfolio and headed over, and I landed the job. And that was at Sieber McIntyre as an assistant art director.
Were you doing medical research, or how was that?
Well, Sieber McIntyre at the time was the third largest healthcare advertising agency in the country. It was the largest in the city. And they did healthcare advertising only. What I mean by that is they were hospital and medical devices, over-the-counter products like cough, cold, and allergy products, and then pharmaceutical agents, medicine. So what we did were campaigns for the professional audience, meaning magazine ads, direct mail campaigns, sales tools for sales reps, and the ads and the direct mail campaigns went to healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, and then we also created patient education materials.
And tell me, how did you become an first improved employee? What was the story about that?
I think it was probably my third year there, maybe my second or third year there. I was voted most improved employee, and that was because, and this is a good lesson for any young person who's getting going in their career. I came in as an assistant art director. Then I was promoted after half a year or so to art director. And somewhere then, several months in, I was marking up a key line for production, and I made a mistake. And they went ahead and printed it with the mistake. And it cost my ad agency a lot of money to reprint this brochure. And I almost got fired for it because of that mistake. But because of everything else I had done, and they saw that I was promising, and they weren't paying me that much money, they thought, okay, well, we'll hang on to her. So I was beside myself, and of course never ever made a mistake like that again. And in fact, a year later, I was involved in putting together a multi-part year-long direct mail campaign for Dorsey Laboratories, who were the makers of Triaminic cough, cold, and allergy products. And what I put together was a campaign that was way beyond what they'd asked for, like 4 times the budget, like $250,000 budget. And we really believed in it, and my account man had us present it, and they bought it. They said, let's do it. And it ended up being the single most successful direct mail campaign in terms of unduplicated response in healthcare advertising in the country.
Oh, that's a great success story.
I mean, like a 45% response rate.
Wow.
That's
nice.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And they gave me some of the artwork at the end of the year as a thank you because of the success of the campaign. They actually gave me 2 of these beautiful original pieces of art framed as a thank you. And that was the year I got voted most improved.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Did you start your own advertising agency after that?
I did. Around the age of 29, that account man who worked with me on that direct mail campaign, he invited me and another person to join him and form an ad agency. And that was in 1982. We formed Hamilton, Carver, and Lee. And we also did healthcare advertising.
Oh, that's very interesting. You had international office?
We eventually did, yes. We eventually, actually, I shouldn't say eventually, our very first client was Abbott International Hospital Products. So we immediately went into the international market, and we helped launch an inhalation anesthetic called Forain to the European market. So we were on a plane heading to Paris for a big meeting to all of the European affiliates when I was just 30 or 31, something like that.
So how are your skills in the computer design business? Were you actually employing people that had artistic ability, or at that time?
Well, when computers came into being, as we had Hamilton, Carver, and Lee, absolutely, we were early adopters to those, and we brought computers in, and I hired people who had those skill sets, and we developed those people. And it also was a big advantage to us after we had formed our office in Cambridge, England. We opened our office in Cambridge, England. there is a 7 to 8 hour difference between them and us. So if we were working on a project, we could send it over to them, they could finish it up, or we could be working together on projects and actually extend our workday, and vice versa. They might send things over to us.
I understand you had, you were a single mom back then, or was it difficult for childcare?
I was a single mom, I became a single mom after I left Hamilton Carver and Lee. That's when I became a single mom.
Oh, was it difficult trying to have childcare, the responsibilities of 2 sons?
It's always tough. You know, my heart goes out to any woman, any parent, father or mother who's working full time and they're on their own and they're raising children. It's a real challenge. I left the ad agency in 1995 and decided to get out of advertising completely and created a store called Senses Gift Gallery in downtown Wilmette. And I was divorced. I divorced my business partner. And I had 2 sons, and they were at that time 5 and 12. And I created Senses, and I put it smack in downtown Wilmette because it was just 6 blocks from where I lived. And it was 4 blocks from where my younger son went to school. So I had a really wonderful woman who took care of my children. She watched them even while we had the ad agency. I had children. I had these 2 sons, so we had to have someone watching our children while we were running the ad agency. And she stayed with me after I left the ad agency, and she was like a member of our family. We loved her.
Was I think the store was a healing place or a healing moment for you?
It truly was. The store was created after 2 to 3 years of real personal work, personal introspection and reflection, and I was 40 and I was looking at my life. I'd lived a lot of life. I'd learned a lot. I'd done a lot. I had a lot of skill sets. And I still had a lot of life ahead of me. So I kind of took a look at, really where has the joy been in my life? What am I good at? What am I not good at? What do I really, really want to do next? And I knew that the senses were really critical to my enjoyment of life. I knew that I wanted to stay near my sons. I'd spent too long traveling all over the place and not spending as much time with my sons as I wanted to. And I wanted to immerse myself in my community because I'd been in Wilmette for years and years and years, but hadn't really spent a lot of time in the community. So I really changed my life in forming Senses. It was a beautiful, healing place. I'd been through some tough things, like lots of people. So I created a place of beauty and kind of sensory delight, if you will.
What was your statement that everybody had to sign? Tell me the story about that.
It was our philosophy, which was calligraphed on a big sign, and right up front when you walked in the store it said, "It is our hope to have created a haven in which you can indulge your senses, leave your daily cares behind, and enter back into the world refreshed." And a friend of mine at the time, who was a writer and creative director at Leo Burnett, wrote that. Her name is Betsy Simpson, and I thank her for that.
Did you employ several people in your store? Or?
I did. I had 2 adult women who were full-time employees, and then I liked to hire bright young high school students. And I tended to hire them when they were sophomores, and they would stay with me all the way through high school and even come back while they were in college. So I had really great employees, amazing employees. And my full-timers were with me for a lot of years.
Then I understand that you also have a toy store that is...
I did briefly, yes. I had a store across the street called Kids Sense Toy Store. And I had that from when did I open that? I can't even remember now. It's all a blur. I had that for maybe 3 years. Senses I had for 10.
Wow. So, I mean, I guess it was like more dynamic, and there was like a mantra, and then like you had all the six senses that come out when you
Yes.
visit.
Yeah, senses was gifts and treasures to delight all your senses. And it was sight, sound, scent, taste, touch, and then what I called the sixth sense thought. So, and the store was organized by that. So it was just, it was a pleasure. It was a beautiful place, and it attracted so many wonderful people. I'm many friends now because of meeting them through senses.
And then how did you get involved with Wilmette Library?
Oh, well, the Wilmette Library happened after, in 2005, we all know there was an economic downturn. There continued to be, but I had to close the store in 2005. And by that time, I'd gotten very involved in the community with the village, helped form the Village Center Merchants Group and created all the advertising campaigns and promotional campaigns to bring people into the village. I did all my own marketing and PR for Senses, for my own store. And I got involved with the Business Development Advisory Group as part of the Village of Wilmette. Got very involved in working with the Chamber of Commerce. And as Senses was winding down, we really saw a need to, I felt a real need to do a public service campaign to help the community understand how really important it was to support your local businesses. These local businesses are run by people who tend to live in that neighborhood, live in that community. They pay taxes. They tend to be the ones who contribute to all your fundraisers. A good portion of the money that you pay towards sales tax goes back into the community. So supporting these local businesses is absolutely critical. So I put together a proposal for a year-long campaign and presented it to the village board, and they accepted it. And that launched Carver Creative. Senses Gift Gallery wound down, and Carver Creative then wound up. And that's the business that I'm doing now. It's Carver Creative, and it's big thinking. My thinking from working for big, gigantic corporations and companies, but applying it to smaller businesses. Big thinking for small businesses.
How did you
And
get
that
the
led to
idea,
Wilmette
though?
Theater, and that led to the Wilmette Library, to doing some work for them.
So you got the idea from Carver Creative, but then how did you do the brand and logo design for so many companies and even Walsh? How are you there now?
Well, I just, I really love entrepreneurs. I admire their guts. I admire what it takes to start a business and to run a business and to keep a business going. And I love communication, and I love creating brands and being true to brands and creating a brand identity and figuring out how to communicate a product or a business to a potential audience. Who's that audience, and what is the message, and what are the media that you would use in order to appeal to that audience, in order to sell that product or to promote that business. And so I like working from soup to nuts, you know, from figuring out what that company is and has to offer and what that message is. And if they're launching and they don't have a brand, then how do I create that brand identity, meaning the logo, the tagline, the whole feeling, the whole gestalt of the brand or product. And then what's that message that's going to communicate that? And then what media are we going to use to get that word out, whether it's a website, or it's advertising, or it's mail, or it's videos, or it's a television commercial, or it's radio, or whatever, social media. How do you get the word out?
Have you done TV and radio before for your advertising or example?
I did 4 different television commercials last year. Those were my first television commercials.
Wow.
I did those. They were 30-second spots. And radio, I did a couple radio spots for some of the clients that I've worked with. So.
And what are the skills that are needed in advertising? For any tips for high schoolers or even graduates in any art programs or advertising?
Curiosity is a huge one. You know, you have to be curious about the world, and you want to be able to learn about things. You need to be able to take information in, and you need to be able to sort through it and make sense of it. And then you either need to love words or you need to love graphics in order to then express that. You know, if you love graphics, you can team up with the writer. If you're a writer, you can team up with a designer, and the two of you together can create wonderful work together. But it's really all those things, and it's tenacity, and it's resilience, and it's being able to handle pressure.
Do you have any endeavors for your family, for your two sons, or?
Well, they're pretty much launched on their own. They're 24 and 31 now. My older son's about to graduate with a degree in electrical engineering after 5 years working as a sound engineer for a recording studio in Evanston. And my younger son is launched down in Austin, Texas. He is in charge of doing social media campaigns and Google and Bing campaigns for a company that promotes software.
Oh,
so
great.
He's responsible for generating qualified leads gained strictly through the internet.
And what is your marketing campaign for Walsh Healthcare in Evanston?
That's really that's just been launched. Walsh is a new client of mine, and they've been around for 20 years. Lynn Bednar is the owner, and they have employees that have been with them for 10, 20 years. And they are just a fantastic company with breadth of product and depth of knowledge and guidance. And Whole Foods is opening up, or has just opened, up the street, which is a terrific store. But they have natural health products. And the goal was to help people see the value of Walsh and why go to Walsh rather than going to Whole Foods. There are many products that Walsh has that Whole Foods doesn't, but for sure the amount of personal advice and guidance that you get is extraordinary. And their pricing is comparable too. So they're just a terrific company.
Thank you again for this wonderful conversation, Laurie Carver.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
It was very informational. Thank you again. This is Real People, Real Matters with Diana Tulchinsky.